Hello, and welcome back to Chick Costa. Today we're going to review our unit on applying the sine law and the cosine law. So in this unit, we learned how to solve problems that involve a field of math called trigonometry, which is all about triangles. We stepped up our game, and by the end of the unit, we were able to solve triangles that have acute angles, not just right triangles, using these two special laws, the sine law and the cosine law. And we saw how those showed up in the real world as well. We started this unit by recognizing that in three-dimensional reality, which is the one that we live in, a 2D shape like a triangle can be really useful to measure distances, even in 3D space. And learning about a triangle helps us learn about angles. And those angles, which are involved in direction and rotation, can be used to measure all sorts of distances, even distances that we can't physically reach. To start off, it's important to recognize that a triangle has only six elements, six different pieces of it, three sides and three angles. Those are the only six quantifiable number or quantifiable parts of a triangle. In this unit, we learned that if you know three out of these six elements, you can find out all of the other three, and we learned how to do that for acute triangles. Start off by looking at right triangles first of all. And in a right triangle, depending on which angle you choose, there are three ratios that are always true. The sine ratio tells you how big the side that is opposite the angle you're talking about will be in relation to the hypotenuse. How many times as long as the hypotenuse is the opposite side. The cosine ratio tells you how the ratio of the side that is adjacent to the angle as well and in comparison to the hypotenuse. And finally, tangent tells you the ratio of the side that is opposite the angle that we're looking at in relation to the side that is adjacent to it. In a nutshell, these are the three equations that relate an angle measure to the two relevant sides. And an easy way to remember all three equations at the same time is SOHCAHTOA. Your calculator has these buttons to actually calculate the ratio based on an angle, and every single angle measure has a ratio that's associated with it. If you want to solve a right triangle, just find out which of the two sides you are trying to compare and choose the ratio based on that side. The last thing is actually, if we have the ratio, we can always go backwards and find out what angle led to that ratio. And we would do that just by using the inverse functions on our calculator, and that's what they look like here. Usually those are obtained by pressing second or shift and then pressing the trig ratio on your calculator, and that gives you the inverse. After we learned about the trig ratios, we learned about where they show up in real life. They show up in giving people directions, they show up in geometry. Basically, in any situation, if you can imagine a right triangle, you can use the trig ratios to find a side length or an angle measure, as long as you have three other elements, or really two, plus the 90-degree angle that that right triangle has. We also learned two new terms, the angle of elevation and the angle of depression. And those help us when describing a situation that comes out of real life. An angle of elevation or inclination is the angle formed between a horizontal line and a line that is pointed upwards from that same point. An angle of depression is the same, except we go downwards from the horizontal. Now that we're done with right triangle trigonometry, we looked at acute triangle trigonometry. We learned the sine law, which is a set of equations that give you the same ratio. And you can use the sine law when you have in a triangle a pair, which means an angle and the side that is opposite it. You would just choose the version of the sine law that has the variable that you want to solve for in the numerator. Whether that's an angle, you would use this version, or a side length, you would use this version. You could also use the cosine law. If you have a three sides of a triangle, you can use that to find any angle, as long as this side matches the side that is opposite this angle. You can also use it if you have two sides and the angle that is in between them, and you can use that to find the measure of the third side. Remember, the angle between them must go over here, and the side that is opposite that angle must go over here. You can use Acute triangle trigonometry in real life, especially to measure distances that you can't reach. Like surveyors or cartographers might use it like in that way. Carpenters might use it to measure buildings or measure furniture, especially if they're unable to reach one part of the building. And that is about it for this unit for acute triangle trigonometry, using the sine law and the cosine law and the trig ratios to imagine triangles in real life and using what we know about those triangles to measure distances that we may not be able to physically measure ourselves. If you like this video, please like, rate, subscribe, and join our mailing list. And you can find this lesson as well as practice question solutions, handouts, and more on our storefront. Thanks and have a great day.